an outreach strategy in which we are going into major universities and we're working with venture capitalists and investors in order to find who's out there really scaling clean technology. And through that campaign, we were able to assemble well over a few thousand applicants. At the end, we filtered it out. We found that we had about 126 of the world's leading experts in renewable energy. And we were able to create a system in which they could communicate with one another, and they could talk to our selection committee and our jury and all the experts back at the Abu Dhabi Future Energy Corporation. And the prize, in this case the award, was really intended in order to draw out all these experts, to create a community, and once that community was established, harness that community for the interests of Masdar. What they're trying to do there in Abu Dhabi is they're building a zero carbon footprint city, and they have $30 billion to do it, and they're going to do it. The rate limiting factor is not how much money they can pour into it, it's how much talent and how much new technology they can use in order to meet their goals. So the reason I'm telling you this story is because I really think when we talk about social media or social networking, it's this vague amorphous term, and no one's really quite been able to figure out what the real business model is behind it. I mean, you go into Santa Monica, you talk to Richard Rosenblatt at Demand Media, these companies that are rolling up all these websites and bolting on these social networking utilities, and they're really figuring this out. And what I would say is cut through that and start with trying to figure out what it is you're trying to solve for and what's the community that you're trying to engage. Establish who that community is, and once you've done that, and you can get them communicating with each other and looking very deeply at what it is that you want to accomplish, the power becomes exponential. You can really find people who are able to not only communicate with each other, but add value to what you're trying to do, whether that's through fundraising or whether that's through new technology or new product development. You know, begin by saying, A, what do you want to do, and B, who are the people that you want to help you? And then use these tools in order to define that community and hopefully have them help you or partner with you.
Excellent, excellent. And I think that what Jason's talking about, and I think all the panelists are really saying, is that social media isn't a buzzword. It's about creating a campaign, a communication, a community. And oftentimes it's forgotten that that's really what you're trying to build here, and that when you're solving major issues, whether it is global poverty, whether you're trying to solve social issues of disease, the ability nowadays to actually contact people on a global basis and build initiatives is much greater than it's ever been. And today, we all have the opportunity to do that even on smaller levels. And the cost of getting involved with social media is, the barrier to entry is quite low. It's just that whether or not you want to spend the time and energy in actually building this social media network, that is it's actually a primary question. Do you really want to put your energy in there, and what are your goals and objectives from that?
Can I say one more thing? Because I don't want to come across as this guy that works in the Middle East with these multi-billion-dollar corporations. I think this model is highly relevant to other people who are working in disadvantaged communities. About 10 years ago, I was working in the city of Chicago, and we were trying to build programs for the Chicago Housing Authority. And we were confronted with this notion of the digital divide. And the idea is that people in poor communities don't go online. We didn't believe it then, and I don't believe it now. And I think that the data proves that that was a fallacy. 10 years ago, they said that if you looked in these disadvantaged communities, that they were gaining access to the internet at about 25% a year, right? 2 years ago, we learned that about 2/3 of the homes in these communities had access to the internet. Last year, half of them had access to the internet. Today, the Pew just conducted a survey and found that the fastest growing segments of people that were using mobile devices in order to access the internet were African Americans and Hispanics. If you go into any school in any poor neighborhood in LA and you go and you talk to these kids, they have mobile devices, they have iPod touches, they have PSP players, they have Dell laptops back at their home, which cost what, $200-300? And they're going online, and what they're doing is they're downloading games and they're downloading videos. And so, you know, I think this idea that social media, social networking has to be about people tweeting and like you're going after celebrities and multi-billion-dollar corporate interests, you know, I think there's a model here that can be used in the poorest neighborhoods, and, you know, that can target kids because they're already connected, they're already engaged, and this is a tool that's available for everybody in this room.
Okay, thank you. I think Jane mentioned the word branding, and because I think branding is an interesting term and typically used in the for-profit world, and I'd like to hear from each panelist about what does branding really mean for a charity? Okay.
And really your brand represents what you stand for, right? So one of the challenges that we have at NAWBO is our brand is, within the business community, quite strong. And I say that's a challenge because there's the presumption that, well, you know, women business owners are doing all right. You know, typically the women you see involved in NAWBO are quite successful, and therefore, you know, we need less, which is actually absolutely not true. So one of the challenges of having a very strong brand is the perception that as a nonprofit organization, you don't need as much money or support. But our brand, the one really valuable thing our brand delivers is confidence. You know, within the nonprofit business community, there are a number of other similar mission-driven organizations like ours popping up all of the time. And it becomes a competitive market for us. And as a result, because of our being around for over 30 years, there's a confidence with our brand. There's a confidence with the programs and services that we create. But you know, I have to, as really the fundraiser for the organization, I have to continue to leverage that brand within the community and then link that brand back to what I was saying earlier about the women's business community, that we support them, we support their building their wealth creating capacity because of their tendency, their heavy tendency to give immediately back to the community. So I have to sort of triangulate that message between who we are, what our brand is, what it stands for, and then how people who support us, how it directly impacts the community around them, even if, you know, they don't really understand women in business.
Right. Noah?
Brand is such a 90s term, I think. And it's funny, I was in a meeting last week in Chicago with Easter Seals, which is a very large organization, and there was a PowerPoint slide I saw in one of their presentations about the value of their brand, and it compared Easter Seals to Pepsi and Disney and IBM, and it had all the logos next to each other. And unfortunately, I don't remember exactly what all the numbers were and how it related, but their point was our brand is very recognizable. But unfortunately, there's a large percentage of the population that has no idea what they do. They recognize the logo, they know the name, but they don't know what they do. And when you translate that into what so many of us do in fundraising, there's a good starting point there. There's brand recognition, but the next step is using that brand recognition to do what all of us care about, because so many of us, you know, our metrics are how much money we can raise, but really there are a lot of other metrics out there as well, and only certain ones of them matter. So as far as brand recognition, that's one thing, but as far as what you can do with your brand and how you can turn that into cash and all those sorts of things, that's another topic. And excuse me, I think that it really goes back to where we started the conversation, as Kent was talking about how, you know, it's not like the old days where we're charities. Charities basically means give us money, our hands are out, you know, what are you going to do for us? And that paradigm has changed, where our market, our audience, our donors, our board members are thinking now, what can you do for us? You're the organization. Who can you introduce me to if I sit on your board? What are you going to do for me if I give you money? And that paradigm has changed so much, and rather than just getting frustrated at it, I think what we need to do is somewhat embrace that everybody, including all of us in this room, are somewhat selfish and we want something, whether it's walking in and participating in an organization because it makes me feel good and I'm accomplishing something very worthwhile, or I want my name on the wall. We have to embrace the fact that people need something, and I'll tell you, the brand that our organizations all have relates very much to that, because it attracts people to what we do. So to respond to what Ken